Hi and welcome to another, actually this time rather unexpected part of the journey to the Grand Tournament. So what I've done so far is explain about the three sort of army lists I'm thinking of at the moment. I also went through how I think each of them could go along in battle plans. And then I was asked a question, because the first army I started was Nighthaunt, mostly because when I was getting into it was just a quick way to paint stuff, if I'm going to be honest. Someone's saying, any chance you can make a video on why you wouldn't run your Nighthaunt army? Some more detailed explanation that they are competitive would be awesome. So yes, we can do that. Now, this is when because I was thinking about this, I had been planning it. Because apart from anything else, I've got 2,000 points of Nighthaunt. And I would have to get some more to do this list though. So this is what I was thinking in terms of. So for battle line, a unit of Hex Race, but also 2 units of Chain Rasp Horde, 1 a unit of 20, 1 a unit of 40. I started off, my initial thing was 2 units of 40, but for various reasons to try and make it work, I had to go for a 20 and a 40, with a Guardian of Souls, and putting those in a battalion for 2 reasons. Primarily because the particular, what's it called now? Chain something? The battalion is for 2 units of Chain Rasp Horde and a Guardian of Souls. And what it means is when the Guardian of Souls cast the Spectral Tether on them, which basically raises lost ones back up, they can raise more up. It gives them extra. So that could be really useful, because the whole purpose of these units will be to hold objectives. And, they will be whittled away. I need to be able to bring them back. I was almost thinking of bringing a couple of Vampire Lords as allies, because they get the D3 to be able to bring stuff back, summonable units back, and they are classed as summonable units. So, that was another plan. So there's the Chain Rasp Horde there. Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed as the general, of course. Hex Race and the Black Coach there, which I have even in my 1,000 point games. Reikenor the Grim Hailer to accompany them, so he's a wizard, also reasonable in combat. Bladegeist Revenants just to go wherever they'd be most useful, because they're quite decent in attack. Spirit Torment, we should probably keep close by to them if possible. And Lady Alinda. So, why have I sort of decided against it? First of all, it doesn't have anything really massively unpleasant. It doesn't have a huge fear factor, ironically, for Ghosts. And I'd also worry about getting into any high-level engagement, such as against something like Archaon, for example, or Greater Demons, because I don't think I think the army works well. There's a certain amount of synergy in it, although that's unfortunately absent here. But against something like a proper beast, it may struggle. So if we have a look do what I did with the previous one and have a look at the different battle plans. So border war. So in this situation where I have to capture multiple objectives, I can't just get away with 1 or 2. So what I thought for this one is have my most combat orientated units on the left, as you see it there, to attack 1 of those middle ones. The Chain Rasp to get to the other one and hold it there with my general Guardian of Souls, who's just in range to be able to keep up both of the Chain Rasp Horde units, and Lady Alinda. The problem is the Guardian of Souls ideally would be over with the combat orientated ones, because he gives +1 to wound for units in range. But, you can't have both things. And I could get, because I've got the battalion, that means I can deploy the Guardian of Souls and both units of Chain Rasp Horde as 1 deployment. So what would we have there effectively? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 choices to deploy. For 2,000 points, that's not bad. That's a decent chance of not there are smaller ones I've seen, but generally speaking, that might be considered a reasonable chance to be able to guarantee yourself the first turn. And if you can get the first turn, if you deploy a few units in reserve, which I would, and you get the first turn, you can plonk them straight down on those objectives. No messing. The Black Coach couldn't, because you need the Black Coach on the battlefield to be able to roll the levels. But the Hex Wraiths could, the Bladegeist Revenants could, and the big unit of Chain Rasp Horde could, in a situation like this. Just get them down, then bang them down, and then have the rest of the army run up to support them. That would work fine. I just look at it and just think to myself, I'm not sure here, because I could. What would happen, for example, if my opponent, rather than split their forces up, said, right, you can keep one of those things, I'm going to attack the other. Would I be able to stand it while reinforcements came across? And I'm not sure I could. And that's always the worry with Nighthaunt. It's really nice, the ability to not have a modified save. You know, that their save doesn't get modified. But you pay a premium for it. You don't generally have very much, and units don't stand up to much punishment. And if you focus at something, you can take it out. It's a bit of a worry for me. But this particular one, I'd be the most confident of. The problem comes with other ones. So if we look at, say, Take and Hold. So this is one where I can't do anything back here. My opponent's not going to come on to me. I need to, or at least I need to assume that I need to come on to them. So I've got to race forwards, but I've got to keep something behind. So I'm racing forwards against 2,000 points of enemy army with less than 2,000 points of my own. The plan, of course, would be to keep the smaller unit of Chain Rasp sat on top of that, move forward with everything else. And this is where I have a problem potentially in terms of winning the battle against absolute monsters, your likes of Archaon, Nagash, Marathi, these sorts of things. Because my characters cannot stand up to punishment. My general, the Knight of Shrouds and Ethereal Steed, 6 wounds. Spirit Torment, Guardian of Soul, 5 wounds. Lady Alinda is like, and Raikenel, you know, they're only like 7 wounds. I don't have any proper beasts of characters. You know, the overall army is decent. I'm not saying it's uncompetitive, but it doesn't have any real monsters in it. You know, proper horrible characters that can not only be used psychologically to draw enemy forces away from something if they fear that you're attacking with it, but actually to just do a crap load of damage if you decide to ignore it. You know, I worry that if my characters get focused down, and if they're focused down with, say, mortal wounds, something that can cause mortal wounds, and you think to yourself, well, you know, you get a 6-up save against that. That's more than most. Yes, it is, but, you know, you're paying such a high price for some of these models, these units, and a 6-up isn't really that helpful. So, and that's your problem. But what you're paying your premium for is the unmodifiable save. But if you have something that bypasses that save anyway. So that's a bit of a worry. And then the biggest worry of all, this was my serious worry, the 3 places of power. So this is where you've got objectives that can only be captured by heroes. So what am I going to do about this? If I was faced with this, I'd be thinking, right, get the Chain Rasp Horde past 2 of them. The one on the left is not the one I would attempt to assault, even though I've got Raikenor there. That's the one I put pressure on. The Chain Rasp Horde will stand. I mean, a unit of 40 is going to stand for a bit, and the other one's going to stand as well. I mean, the problem is, of course, you can just say, oh, just keep raising them up. You've got to bear in mind, even though I've got the battalion that allows me to raise more back up with the spell, it's 1 spell and 1 character has that spell, and my opponent will know that, and they will prioritize attempting to unbind that 1 spell. The rest of my spells are not going to be as nearly as useful to me. So but it's possible, but for this one I seriously would have to have the first go. If I could get the first go, I could have the Chain Rasp Horde at least deploy in reserve and then just plonk them forward. As I still have to be more than 9 inches away from my opponent, but that would still allow me to get them slightly forward of the objectives, get the characters racing up really quickly. I'd be able to capture that. I'd probably be able to get all of them up to it straight away if I could guarantee the first turn, and I would deploy for that purpose. And then, you know, I could capture the first turn. It's then holding on to them. And I'd have to, I mean, the Hex Wraith and the Black, the reason I've chosen the Hex Wraith, the Black Coach, and Raikenor to assault whichever side objective that I'd sort of let my opponent get eventually, but put some pressure on it, is because if they decided to go for a different one, they're fast enough to be able to get across and support. But where you've got a real problem is if you end up with a double turn. So if I go first and capture them, get them there, then my opponent comes in, steaming in, and again, if they go for one place to begin with, and then, because it sort of ramps up, the number of victory points you get ramps up, so you get more victory points later on in the battle than earlier on. So they can take the view that they can let you have a couple of them early on. They just need to get one, crash into one, and again, you know, even though everything's close enough to support each other, if they go for one, and then they get the first turn on the next go, and that's just down to dice rolls, and they'll have a slightly better chance. No, they won't. I would actually. No. Even so, it's too risky. If a double turn could kill me off, because I don't know, it's just not strong enough to stay. And this is assuming I can get the first turn. If I'm up against, for example, 3 Great Unclean Ones and 3 units of Plague Bearers, that's 6 choices. And if they've gone for the Thrice Befoulment, just let's say, then that's actually 4 deployment choices. They're going to go, if they want to go first, they'll be going first, and they will go first, and they'll be able to race up to them. They'll capture them first. And then I've got to shift Great Unclean Ones off them. And in that situation, they actually might well put a Great Unclean One on every single one. And then I'm sort of forced to have to go and take one out slowly and then another. That's assuming I can even do that, because it will put Plague Bearers in my way as well. And they will take some munching through, because if they do take 3 Great Unclean Ones, they can't have 3 units of 30 Plague Bearers. So I could try and go for the one with 20. And the reason I think in those terms is because Cloud of Flyers doesn't just give them a reduction in my hit bonus for shooting, of which I have very little, almost none. I did the Black Coach. But in close combat as well, it's -1 to hit them, which I could do without. But if they're a unit of 20, I can just kill one of them and then it's gone. So yeah, I just looked at it and I just came to the conclusion. I imagined, because I've obviously been researching the lists that others take, and I'm not minded to copy any of those, because not just because I want to come up with my own, but which I do, but just because I also want a list that I find enjoyable to play. And don't get me wrong, I'd be super curious to try this out. I'd be really, really curious to give it a go and see how it does. I'd miss the fact that I'm not able to take my Banshees along. I love my Banshees. They're my favourite unit. But in this, I just thought I need blocks to hold objectives. And this, I think, would give me the best chance of doing that. And as I say, I had seriously considered bringing vampires along. Because then, you know, if you bring 2 vampire lords along, the problem with that, eventually I sort of decided, is although they can bring back D3 slain models or heal D3 wounds, but for the chain rasp that, so that's an average of 4 on both of them. Keep them in range on 4 on both of them, and that'd be 140 points each. So 280 points seems quite decent to me. The issue was, from a magic point of view, that they don't have, like most wizards get a spell that's their spell and they can cast that. They don't. And because there'd be an ally, they wouldn't be able to pick a spell from a lore. They can't pick a spell from the Lord of Vampires because it's not a Legion of Nagash list. They can't pick, I mean, allies can't. So they'd just be raising up those models, and I just wouldn't. And you'd have to keep them, except in desperate situations, out of harm's way, because they're not that difficult to kill either. I mean, you can give them the goblet. So I was thinking in those terms, and I didn't completely dismiss it as an option, but I did sort of think, no, it's probably better not. And I just couldn't come up with a way where I was confident in all 3 of these battle plans. And of course, there are other battle plans as well, but I always, like I said in the last video, I think that all battle plans are a derivative of one of these 3. And I just looked at it and I thought, I can't. I mean, if I could get the first turn, I'd be happier. But if I can't, and it's 8 choices I'd be putting down, there are definitely armies that will have less than that. You know, the real cheesy ones, you know, your Nagash with 3 big blocks of skeletons, your Great Unclean Ones and Plague Bearers, all those ones would be able to choose to go first. And all of them would be able to go fast enough to get onto those objectives before I can, which means I have to fight them off it. And I think with Nighthaunt, you either come up with a list that can hold an objective, which is what I try to do, or you can come up with a list that can take objectives. I don't, at the moment, it's not apparent to me how I could come up with one that would be able to do either, depending on circumstances. You know, because part of me thinks, you know, if I came up with a list that allowed me, forget about holding objectives, just try and come up with a list that's like a hammer blow to an opponent, and try and just attack one part of the army. Let them have objectives in the first couple of turns, because if you can actually go with the plan of destroying the army, because if you can do that, usually if you can do that, you can actually manage it by the end of the third turn, at which point you're sorted, because even if they've got all the victory points in turns like 2 and 3, you beat it by having it in 4 and 5. So you look at it and you think, right, that's the way it could work. Just come up with a hammer blow army and go down one side of it and just slowly across. Would I be confident even in that situation? Not necessarily, because again, I think Nagash, load of skeletons, and stuff to keep raising them up. They'll just get little like necromancer, vampire lord, stuff like that to keep raising them up. You know, a couple of necromancers and that. No, I can't see it. I can't see it. You know what? No. And that's the way I was looking at it and thinking, there's armies that I know people take that even if I were to concentrate all my forces against that one thing, I'd think to myself, I'd still struggle. I would struggle in 2 turns to make serious strides there. So I've moved away from it. Not necessarily permanently. It would be interesting, and even going through it now, part of me thinks, oh, wouldn't it be a nice little challenge. But it's the sort of thing, you see. Now, bear in mind what I'm going to in May are heats. To qualify for the grand final in September, I need to finish in the top third, because there's 3 heats. Now, if I can do that, I actually could go to the grand tournament finals and take a more experimental one, because I certainly wouldn't be going to the grand finals in September expecting to place highly. So, you know, the main reason I want to qualify from the heats, I mean, natural competitiveness, of course, but the main reason is so I get another tournament out of it, because I get to go to the tournament in September as well. So it's like 2 tournaments. So that's why I'd like to play it safer in the first one, and then I might well be prepared to take an experimental army for the grand tournament in September. But we'll see. I've got to obviously qualify from this one first, and that's not going to be any easy task. No easy task at all. I'm not experienced enough. But we'll see how it goes. But anyway, those are sort of the reasons. When I looked at it, and it wasn't just that I thought to myself, I don't think I can win with this army. It's just I felt and still feel more confident with the ones I've already gone through as my likely lads, basically. The Legions of Asgore, Legions of Nagash, and God, I've forgotten it already. What am I talking about? Nurgle, of course, Maggot King of Nurgle. Those ones I feel more confident with. And I've given myself a few more days to decide which one is most likely. So I will update you in a few more days as that. So I hope that explains it. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, and of course, comment down below. Until next time, I'll see you later.